Catch me off guard. Holy crap. Uh, Ashwini, thank you very much for putting me on stage right when I was about to take a sip of my tea. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for coming. I am very excited to be able to get through this presentation with everyone here. First question that I've got off the top of the hour is, where is everyone located? Juan already told me that he was located in Colombia. Can we get another call out of where everyone is from? Yes, Amy, mid sip. I agree. Not the best time to be able to jump on. And V, I'm also a tea person. I drink about 5 or 6 cups a day, which is maybe something I don't want to necessarily admit to. So, where's everybody located? Please let us know. We've got Amanda, who's located in Florida. We've got Carlos, who is in Mexico. We've got Mike in Colorado. Ramiro, who's in Argentina. It's probably hot there. Rigo in South Africa. Britta is in Toronto. Britta, you're back. Thank you so much. I really like your water, by the way. Mark is in the Philippines. Tim is in California. Fatima is in Mexico. We've got Amy from Alabama, Christy from Florida, Shane from Pennsylvania, Nicholas from Arizona, Karen from Detroit. We've got Mirage from Pakistan. We've got a whole bunch of great people here. So this is so cool. It's so multifaceted every single time that I jump on to be able to do a session with people from Time Doctor, which is, to me, a very cool aspect of how we operate our business. So let me start my screen share here, and we're going to get, pardon me, right into it. Let me start this presentation. All right, so can everyone see my screen? Hopefully you can, because I'm going to start this slideshow right now. Perfect. All right, so before we get into this, how many of you did not know about large language models, or ChatGPT as it is otherwise known, a year ago? How many of you had absolutely no idea about artificial intelligence a year ago, and your life has completely and utterly shifted once you've been able to play with things like ChatGPT and Google Bard and a bunch of the other tools that are currently out on the market? Looks like we're getting a lot of really interesting responses, which is cool. So I want to be able to take a very clear deep dive into how AI and work are going to integrate over the next few years. I don't want to scare everyone, because this is not actually a scary presentation. I actually think this is going to be a hugely opportunistic possibility for everyone that is thinking about working with AI, and more specifically, people that are thinking to themselves at this point, hey, um, this is going to be the next big evolution in work. And I absolutely think it is. For those of you that are just jumping on, I know that we've got a lot of people that just jumped on the last little while. Please get a pen and get a notebook. I use my running remote book to be able to write all my notes in the back. Please get a pen and a piece of paper, because I'm going to be going through a lot of information, and just write it all down. That way you can absorb it much easier than if I'm just listening to you and you are passive, or you're listening to me and I'm passive throughout this presentation. So AI and remote work. Let's get into it here. All right, so I want to be able to ask a question to everyone here, which is, how does our industry, or our companies, not just survive but thrive in the age of AI? And that was a triple alliteration. So please let me know the answer to that question, because I spent a lot of time thinking about it. How do we not just survive but thrive? How do we see this not as a scary opportunity, but as an opportunity to change, and an opportunity to be completely shift the way that we think about work? Because I actually think that artificial intelligence is that opportunity. And when you think about where AI is going to take us over the next few years, there are going to be multi-trillion-dollar businesses built off of artificial intelligence, and you want to be part of that process, you don't want to be part of the group that's being left behind. So there really is essentially um, the same problem that is presented everywhere. So for me, embracing AI in your workforce, in workforce management, and accepting the the modern work revolution is essentially the same thing. In this webinar, we're going to really explore how AI is becoming the pivotal force in remote distributed workforces. And it's going to be helping people to overcome the doubts and fully embrace the remote work lifestyle. So for me, this is something that I've been thinking about, as I said before, for the past 20 years. I've been working remotely for about 20 years. Probably haven't said that in this presentation, but I have said it in previous ones. And we want to be able to break old school mindsets and really invite the office traditionalists to experience the modern work revolution of AI and Time Doctor. Because we're talking about, as I said before, the biggest shift in work since probably remote work, to be completely honest with you, that we're going to be experiencing over the next few years. So, really, work has fundamentally changed. When you're thinking about where we were a year ago versus today, and I think about this quite a bit in terms of the presentations that I give all over the world with regards to remote work and how artificial intelligence is going to impact remote work. What happened a year ago with ChatGPT really opened the floodgates for absolutely everything else that we're thinking about with regards to work and how work is going to change. And we're not necessarily recognizing that change today, but the seeds have been planted where we're going to have to change the way that we fundamentally work. And even though it's probably not impacting your daily workflow today, it will definitely be impacting your workflow a year from now, and it will definitively be impacting your workflow 5 years from now. So I don't know about you, but who's someone that follows this on a daily basis, understanding the technological trends in our industry, I felt a little bit like this. And this is something that I actually did on an application called Midjourney. And more specifically, since I'm working from home, it's more like this. This is the exact query that I gave to Midjourney, which was scared comical guy working from home in a call center with a headset trying to do his job, overlooked by the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Um, the horseman part they didn't really get super well. It's kind of like jockeys around him, but the previous one was actually really good. And this is something that ChatGPT, or not ChatGPT, this is something that Midjourney produced in 10 seconds for me. So when you think about the ability to be able to get a concept, pull that concept in, and be able to process it out and produce an output like this, a year ago, this wasn't even possible. And even though this is a little bit comical, obviously, to be able to show to people today, the reality is that this is the worst that AI is ever going to be. It's only going to get better from here, and it's actually going to get better at a very accelerated rate. So when you think about where we are going to be in 5 years from now, we're essentially going to have images that are probably indistinguishable from a photograph, and we're probably going to have video that is going to be indistinguishable from me doing this video conference with you right now. I could possibly have an AI do this entire presentation for you, and you would not necessarily know the difference, which is scary, but also there's an opportunity there. But I want to tell you a little bit about who I am. So my name is Liam Martin, and I'm the co-founder of Time Doctor, and I'm also the co-organizer of Running Remote, which is the largest conference on building and scaling remote teams. And I also co-wrote this with Rob Rawson, the CEO of the company, called Running Remote, which was a Wall Street Journal bestseller. And my mission in life is to try to understand how work works. And we've worked with thousands of companies all over the world to really try to figure this out. And I've recognized that there are two driving forces that are going to dictate the success of work over the next 5 years. One is remote work and the other is artificial intelligence. So we're talking about one side of that table today. The book. So I wrote Running Remote about 10 months ago. It became a Wall Street Journal bestseller and was stated to be a critical and much needed guide to thriving in the new world of asynchronous work by people like Cal Newport. We've had other people like Matt Kepnes, Scott Young. We've had Kim Scott, who's a New York Times bestselling author of Radical Candor, who's one of my personal um, favorites in terms of a fantastic book to read on how to deploy work at scale. And we have team members in 46 different countries all over the world. And we work seamlessly throughout all of those different countries because we've recognized that enabling not only remote work, but also enabling the tools that we're going to talk about, and in essence, artificial intelligence allows us to be able to have a seamless workforce that can work so much more independently and effectively than a company that's located in the office that doesn't use these new tools that we're going to be presenting to you. So, to get into the nitty gritty of this, what is basically going to be the impact of AI on workforce management? Well, to do that, we actually have to go back and understand where work is coming from. Um, I don't know if any of you know this. Does anyone know? And maybe this slide is actually going to disclose this beforehand. But the first instances of AI, the very first instance of artificial intelligence, which by my definition and also by everyone's definition, is the application of a piece of software to be able to analyze a problem and adapt its own solution to that problem. So essentially, as opposed to just being directly programmed and being told, hey, do XYZ, it's told instead, accomplish XYZ, and the framework, the software actually adapts itself to be able to identify that answer. That's all that AI is fundamentally. So the first usage of artificial intelligence was actually Turing during the Second World War, and he was able to decrypt the German Nazis' encryption algorithms using artificial intelligence, using computing, in order to be able to identify the secret message that people were sending during the Second World War. And by doing that, he actually was able to essentially win the war. Without Alan Turing, the the West would not have been able to beat the Nazis during the Second World War, and the world would probably look very, very different from where it is today. 1980s and 90s, we had fundamentally the introduction of AI in industries including primitive workforce management. So, like, we've got things like XCon as an example. We just had the beginning of neural networks that began to be applied to business problems, aiding in the forms of workforce analytics. And then in the 2000s, we had the integration of AI with HR systems, scheduling, and task management. So the biggest example of that being SAP integrated machine learning algorithms into its ERP systems to aid in HR functions such as recruiting and performance tracking. Companies like Kronos incorporated it and began developing AI-driven workforce management solutions to help with employee scheduling and time tracking. Then we're really up until the present, we've got AI-driven workforce solutions that are building out predictive analytics, employee engagement, and more. And that's where Time Doctor and a lot of other companies pull in. So tools like IBM's Watson to focus on talent, providing AI-driven solutions to recruitment and career development and employee engagement. We also have platforms such as Time Doctor that use AI to analyze productivity patterns, providing insights suggesting for better work-life balance, particularly for remote teams. We have other software like Humu, which leverages behavioral economics and machine learning to deliver nudges that help managers lead better teams and collaborate more effectively. And actually, a tool that I'm using right now is a tool called Poised, which actively manages and monitors my speech to be able to track how fast I'm talking, whether I'm being inspirational, whether I'm being funny, whether I'm being negative, It's essentially it's analyzing all of the data to be able to see the current emotional state that I'm communicating to you guys and figuring out whether or not this is something that I need to do in terms of changing the way that I communicate. So the impact that we're really seeing in artificial intelligence and remote work is threefold. So enhancing productivity and efficiency, we're doing remote work transformation, and then we're actually going to be breaking up the skeptics on this one. So analytics and automation, the use of machine learning and data analytics for predictive insights into employee performance, automation of tasks, reducing human error, and freeing up managers' time, real-time monitoring and recommendation for optimal allocation. This is really important for us because we see this as a critical aspect of how work will happen in the future. When we see the impact on remote work, really these tools are going to be able to allow you to be able to free people from the office so that they no longer actually have to be tied to a particular space where that manager is interacting with them directly, because you'll actually have measurement tools that aren't dependent upon space and time to be able to measure those workers. Time doctors are a critical part of that. And then also talking about breaking up the skeptics, addressing the common fears and misconceptions about artificial intelligence. And there are a lot. And I am actually going to go through those. Probably a lot of you on this call are thinking to yourself that AI will completely destroy the world. And the chances of that are actually very low statistically. And I'll probably be able to, by the end of this presentation, convince the vast majority of you that it's not anywhere near as scary as it needs to be. So how we see using AI inside of Time Doctor and as it applies to the future of work, we think that by focusing and refining our internal data inputs and correlating those with longitudinal quantifiable outcomes, we can analyze exactly how to not just work more effectively today, but in the future as well. So let me give you kind of like a long-term vision by bringing you all the way back to 1988. Does anyone know, and I'm going to actually wait for a while here because I know we're on a delay. Does anyone know who this character is? I would love for the first person in the chat to be able to tell me who is this happy little wacky character that you see on your screen right now. Yes, it is Clippy. Mike is the first one. Mike, if you want a free copy of Time Doctor, you message us, give us your email address. I will send you a free copy of this book. It is Clippy. Nicholas, you got Clippy right after. It's Lauren got Clippy too. Juan, Clippo, you got it wrong. Maybe that's Spanish, but we've got a lot of different versions of Clippy. And yes, it was Windows 98, Microsoft. Thank you so much, guys. So basically, Clippy was this happy little wacky character that would float around inside of Windows with you and would give you various suggestions as to how you were doing your work. If you had a question, you could ask Clippy. When you clicked on him, he kind of just spun around. He would give you happy little messages. What we see, our vision of AI for Time Doctor and also just for work in general, is there will be a much more advanced version of Clippy that works through your workday with you. Where are you spending your time? Where are you spending your time effectively versus ineffectively? What specific actions can you take right now to be able to change the way that you're working so that you're less stressed, you're more focused, you're more productive, you are not as inefficient as you could be. These are all things that I think will be the long-term vision of remote work and AI and actually just work and AI when I see the long-term direction about it. You can absolutely disagree with me in the comments. It looks like some people are actually, which is funny. But my perspective is that there will be this type of assistant that pulls you through your workday and optimizes what you're doing right and minimizes what you're doing wrong. So Time Doctor customers can quickly identify productivity issues, ensuring continuous performance improvements and accountability in remote work. And this kind of touches on one of the features that we've actually already shipped as it applies to artificial intelligence inside of Time Doctor already. So if you're an active Time Doctor customer, this has either been shipped out to you in a beta feature report, or it very well soon will be in the next week, which is the unusual activity report. Now, for those of you that don't know, unusual activity is essentially, we've had a very weird phenomenon where in March of 2020, actually in February of 2020, 4% of the US workforce was working remotely. By March, 45% of the US workforce was working remotely. That's the biggest shift in work since the Industrial Revolution, and we did it in 1 month. So during that time, there was a huge influx with regards to remote work, but there was also a huge influx of people that were trying to actually game the system. And I don't know if any of you can see this tool right here, but does anyone know what this thing is? And again, since you know that Mike just won a free book, I am, for the first person that can tell me what this is, I would love to hand out another free book to people. What is this thing? It is, I know that I'm on a delay right now. It's like a 45-second delay, but basically it should already have come in at this point. What this thing is yes, Lauren, you win another free copy of Running Remote. It is a mouse emulator. Nicholas, it is some type of imitator. You are right. Greg, it's a mouse tricker. Fermina, it is a mouse mover or jiggler. Tim, it is a click emulator. Now, here's another really interesting piece of information. How many of these units do you think were sold during the pandemic in the last 3 years? I won't pause to be able to give you the answer on this one. Our estimates is that between 1 to 3 million of these units were sold during the pandemic. And we did an analysis through Amazon and picking up a couple other experts that are able to analyze e-commerce sales. So that's just on the physical version of this tool. So essentially what happens is you put a mouse right on top of your mouse mover, and then it spins the mouse in a particular motion. So we've identified that there's 1 to 3 million of these physical tools that have been built, but there's also millions and millions of other people that have downloaded software to be able to essentially trick tools like Zoom, Microsoft Teams, Slack, anything that requires you to be on and working to be able to get that little green bubble. And also, they have attempted to trick tools like Time Doctor. However, we've been able to detect that data for quite a while, and using artificial intelligence, we can analyze when we see unusual activity being produced by possibly tools like this. So this is a feature that you can already access today inside of Time Doctor, inside of some of our experimental reports. But you can see we monitor keystroke activity. So is there unusual amounts of keystroke activity? Is someone just clicking on the same key? Is someone clicking on keys in a particular sequence as an example? That's all examples of unusual activity. We also have unusual amount of mouse movements and mouse clicks. What if someone is just clicking their mouse and not moving it? Pretty weird activity. What if someone is just moving their mouse but not clicking on anything? Also unusual activity. And so we've been able to analyze this data using artificial intelligence to be able to tell you whether or not someone is implementing a tool like this. Now, we can never be definitive about that, and we want to be able to make that super clear, but that allows you to be able to get that data to be able to have a conversation with that particular worker and identify whether or not this is someone that might be using this type of tool, which isn't just a productivity issue, it's also a security issue, because a computer being left alone, let's say you work for a banking company as an example, where you'd be able to get access to banking records or credit card information or financial records or medical records. It's really important that that information remains secure. So it's important that these tools not be used inside of your workflow when you are working from home. So that's unusual activity. We also have another one, which we're quite excited about, which is the ability to access multiple benchmarking data points from a dashboard. We can then, by using Time Doctor, quickly identify productivity issues in ensuring continuous performance improvement. So this is another example of something that we're calling the benchmarking report. And what this report essentially allows you to do is it allows you to be able to measure whether or not people are high performers or low performers inside of your organization, and specifically what you need to do to improve your performance throughout your workday. So it identifies performance gaps. It allows you to be able to compare and contrast, let's say, different individuals, different departments, different organizations. Maybe an organization in the Philippines is actually much better at customer service than an organization in, I'm going to pick on someone, then I'm trying to go through all the countries and I don't want to pick on anyone specifically, then Canada, because I'm from Canada, except for Britta, who is also in Canada too. Those two groups, we can actually compare and contrast those two and then allow us to be able to identify why is a team in the Philippines such a better performer than a team in Canada. And you can actually, it's not just, hey, here are the numbers, there's one team better than the other, but then we can actually build that as a coaching experience to be able to say what specific insights from the Filipino team can we transition over to the Canadian team. So it allows you to be able to look at data like this. So this is a perfect example. Total time tracked for the average hours per user tracked in your team is 134 hours and 10 minutes. It's 158 hours for similar companies. It's 155 hours in your company, and it's 132 hours for similar teams. So you can just compare and contrast all of that data. Because we have the largest second by second work database on the planet, we can actually go out and collect that data and give that to you in an anonymized basis so you can see how you compare to everyone else inside of the organization. And then you can identify performance issues. So is there too much workload on one particular department or one individual in comparison to others? Policy adherence, right? If you want to say, hey, we want to start implementing the usage of a new project management system throughout our organization, you could actually see what percentage of the workday individual users, groups, departments are using that particular project management system, and then specifically figure out, do they need more training? If they're below that target, are they not really understanding how the tool is being used properly? Were they even given that initial training that they needed to do in order to be able to actually be more successful? You can identify, as I said, essentially performance gaps inside of the company. And we've got individual user comparisons as well, which I've already addressed. All right. And by the way, Mike said 100 million and Riju said 3 million. Riju, you definitely got a lot closer on the mouse clicker than Mike. Mike, 100 million, that would be terrible, to be honest with you. But it's definitely more than 3 million when you include the software installs. And to be honest with you, we really can't measure the software installs. But if we're talking 1 to 3 million units sold of these that are just the physical version, we're probably thinking exponentially more for the software version of these types of tools. And if you're using that type of tool today, recognize that if you use Time Doctor, we can measure that very quickly and easily. So another forward step that we're thinking about outside of just benchmarking is talking about building very specific integrations with tools like Zendesk. And by talking about just tools like Zendesk, it's anything that provides a longitudinal quantifiable metric, a definition of success. So we have over 12,000 daily active users inside of that use Zendesk every single day inside of Time Doctor. And for us, we really wanted to be able to figure out what defines a good Zendesk user from a bad Zendesk user. Specifically, How do they use their workday? What things do they do throughout their workday? How do they interact with it? So this is another feature that we are shipping inside of Time Doctor, which you actually can already have beta access to if you are part of the beta program. So here's a perfect example of the way that that data works. We have our Time Doctor data and we have our Zendesk data. So we have things like unproductive time, the amount of hours that you've worked. We can have the percentage of time you spent on Zendesk, the amount of tickets that you've closed, the average response time, the average customer satisfaction time. And then we can compare and contrast that data. We actually had someone that looked at these types of integrations just recently. We had a client and we identified a client that was, or a particular user that was significantly more productive than everyone else inside of the organization, inside of the department that we took a look at. And we thought to ourselves, why is this person, we'll call this person Amy to protect their name, why was Amy so much more productive than everyone else inside of the organization? And we really couldn't figure it out. But what was interesting is that this machine learning algorithm allowed us to be able to see that data, to very clearly identify Amy's output is way better than everyone else's. And what we ended up identifying later on when we investigated this was that this person was using macros inside of their workflow. So they were using a lot of like Control V, Control R, all of the different macros. So this person was a macro ninja inside of Zendesk. And what we quickly identified was, well, we need to be able to communicate this information to everyone else inside of the organization, because the way that this person was using the software was way more efficient than everyone else inside of the organization. And that's the real key that you need to be able to unlock, unlocking those new levels of productivity and output, and then allowing us to be able to distribute that message to everyone inside of the organization. So in this case, we have a metric which is high net promoter score. So net promoter score between these two employees, the actual standard deviation of what that looks like, which is in essence a footprint of, or a fingerprint of what a high NPS level of activity looks like. We compare that to different employees, and then you can see where you sit inside of that data. So for Kevin, as an example, we can see that he's spending under the standard amount of tickets that he needs to be a high NPS fingerprint employee. And then we can correlate that to his data. And Kevin can specifically sit down and say, well, if I actually only focus on tickets closed per hour and interactions per hour and tickets closed in general, I can be back up inside of that high performing footprint to hopefully improve my net promoter score. And that that to me is one that's actually a real game changer, because for us, this is something that we would use every single day and are starting to use every single day inside of Time Doctor to be able to improve our own personal productivity. Another one that we want to talk about is something called process paths. So we have been working on this for, again, quite a long while, about 4 or 5 months. And what we've identified is that a ticket, let's say, and we're using Zendesk as the same example, but let's say a sales deal in a CRM, let's say a task that's completed inside of a project management tool, or a project that needs to be completed. There is starting the task and ending the task, but no one really knows what happens in between. And it's actually a bit of a black hole inside of most businesses. Most businesses don't know what happens when they open a ticket and when they close a ticket inside of a customer support tool, as an example. But a lot of companies want to know that because they want to be able to identify, where can we hack productivity? Where can we boost people's performance? And maybe it's actually a very small tweak that they need to make inside of their workday to be able to completely transform their output inside of the organization. So process paths is that answer. So what we have here is we have the beginning of a whole bunch of tickets that people start throughout their workday. And then we have the amount of tickets that are closed at the end of that particular workday. And in between, we have the different websites and applications that they access. And what amount of time that they access them to be able to start to analyze high performers from low performers. So you can very quickly boil down to an individual ticket if you want. So you can say, in this case, someone opens the Zendesk ticket, they went to the chat pop up, they spent 10 minutes on it, then they went to the website FAQ page for 30 minutes, then they went back to the chat pop up for 1 minute, and they closed the ticket, but it actually resulted in an NPS of 2, which is not very good, right? Anything that's 7 and below is not great. And then we can look at all of those tickets. So we can look at the behavioral flow of a high performer inside of Zendesk or any other project management system that you would have. And then you can start to look at all of the different flows inside of that organization. So what's a high NPS workflow? What's a low NPS workflow? What's a high ticket resolution time workflow? What's a low ticket resolution time workflow? And you can start to analyze and see what correlations there are towards high performers and low performers. And then you can pick up those insights, build out processes for your organization to be able to encourage high performance as opposed to low performance, dependent upon what that metric is inside of your organization. Because another really interesting insight that we've picked up from people inside of our client list is, if we ask 10 different clients, what's your definition of productivity? We'll usually get 10 different answers, which is very frustrating to us. But we've recognized we shouldn't define productivity for people. We should let the individual clients define productivity for themselves. Next one is, we want to be able to, and this one is definitely out into the future, but it is one of those concepts that we're also thinking about as well. We want to be able to provide a completely new way of analyzing data through artificial intelligence. And we want to be able to empower Time Doctor customers like yourselves, if you are a current customer or if you're a projected customer, to answer any question without actually analyzing any of the reporting. Because we've realized we have some real power users inside of the Time Doctor community that look at data, and they can look at the reports in a way that I completely don't understand, but they're able to just be these amazing people that can slice and dice data in ways that's super interesting. But we've also recognized that there are a lot of people that don't have that type of training and don't want to necessarily invest the time. So what we've been thinking about is adding a type of large language learning model functionality inside of Time Doctor, where instead of actually looking up a whole bunch of reports, you would simply just ask a question like, what is the average amount of time people spend on Slack after 8 p.m. in their time zone? And you'd be able to get a direct answer, which is they spend on average 22 minutes after 8 p.m. and 16 out of the 84 users inside of your organization in the last week spent time working on Slack after 8 p.m., which would be a no-no, because if anyone understands our burnout report that we've integrated inside of Time Doctor, spending time on work-related applications outside of your workday elevates your chance of burning out and quitting inside of the organization. Another thing that we're touching on here is just kind of asking all of these questions. So think about it in essence as a tool to be able to really query anything that you need and then get the exact answer that you're looking for. That's the long-term vision. It's probably not possible today as it exists inside of Time Doctor, but very quickly, as these large language models evolve, we foresee every single application having this type of functionality, where it's not an issue of actually looking up reports anymore. It's just an issue of asking a question and getting an answer quickly and easily. Now, we're going to get into some Q&A, and I would love to be able to break that down with everybody in just a minute here. But there are a couple other things that I would love to be able to go over before we go into Q&A, which is, in essence, I believe that a lot of people are scared about artificial intelligence. By making the unknown known, we eliminate the fear of artificial intelligence and AI. This is something that we need to be able to adapt to. If we're not thinking about artificial intelligence in how is this going to boost my productivity and help my workday, you are, in essence, going to get left behind. And goes back to that old adage, if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. And that's a core tenet of what we think about when we are at Time Doctor, which is you need to be able to measure as much as humanly possible in order to be able to manage it effectively. And AI just power boosts this so that everyone can have more data in their hands. And lastly, and this is a really important one, AI will not replace you. I repeat, AI will not replace you. However, someone using AI will replace you. That is an inevitability. We are looking at the adoption rates of artificial intelligence. Even people signing up for this webinar, there were many more people that signed up for this webinar than some of our usual content that we produce here inside of the Time Doctor community. So it just goes to show you that this is something that is going to be completely transformative when you think about where artificial intelligence is going and how you don't want to be left behind in this process. I assure you, this is someone who studies this stuff every single day, reads everything you possibly can on it, because I want to be able to make sure that we're also pulling our company into this next future. If you are not using artificial intelligence to augment your workforce, you will get left behind. There will be other competitors that come up behind you that are able to do it more effectively, and you will need to be able to adapt to that new future. So I'd love to be able to go into Q&A and ask you guys some questions. I know that there is probably a ton of questions that people have. As I said before, I have been studying this stuff forwards and backwards, literally for the last 6 months as the Chief Innovation Officer here in the company. That's really my job, is to be able to take a look at this stuff. So I would love to be able to get as many questions as you want. And then also, too, we're going to show everyone how to get access to some of these features. So Ashwini, if you can bring us to the next screen there, which you'll probably be able to get access to because I can't do it. I want to be able to show you specifically how you can get access to the two features that we talked about that are currently live inside of Time Doctor. And if Ashwini is not able to actually push that next button, then I can, we're going into Q&A. Okay, Ashwini, if you can you actually post the two URLs that that we have for everyone? I want to be able to make sure that everyone gets access to it really quick. How to get access to those features. All right, so first one is the unusual activity report. So let me go and bring that up for everybody. So this is the unusual activity report, which is what I mentioned before. And for anyone that is interested, it allows you to be able to see more transparency through artificial intelligence. As I said before, we've got a bunch of different data sets. You can use this today. It's going to allow you to be able to build more accountability inside of your organization. You're going to be proactive in terms of managing and implementing risk mitigation. This is not just a productivity issue. This is also a security issue inside of these organizations. Inside of this report. So you can actually get a demo of that right now, and you can check that out if you want to. The other part of this is if you want to be part of our beta program, I'm also going to open that one up and show it to everybody here. So it's relatively simple. If you want to be part of our beta program, you put in your email address, your first name. So email address would be, they're all my emails, but email address, your first name, last name, and your company name. Then you just click on sign up today. What you're going to get with this beta program is you're going to get early access to all of our AI-driven features inside of Time Doctor. And we are putting out a lot of them because, as I think you just saw in this presentation, for us, artificial intelligence, we think, is going to be a cornerstone of the future of work. You're also going to be able to influence product development directly. So if you are someone that's really thinking, hey, we need to be able to have these features inside of Time Doctor, you'll be able to do that inside of the beta program. You're also going to get exclusive webinars with not just me, but a bunch of really cool characters that are going to be jumping on and telling you about some really neat things that are not just happening inside of Time Doctor, but in general, where work is going. And fundamentally, you're actually going to be able to stay ahead of the curve. As I said right now, I think everyone needs to be investing in artificial intelligence to some degree. And if you're not currently doing it inside of your business, it's absolutely critical that you do it. So you just click on become a member, you go back up here, email address, first name, last name, and company name, and you are in. All right, so let's jump over to the questions. I apologize, Aswini, for screwing up your flow, but please send. And if anyone else wants to ask any other questions, please ask them right down here because we will figure that out for you. All right, so Fatima Fernanda from somewhere, I think she told me where she was from. Fatima, if you didn't, Tim, thank you very much for just signing up for the beta. Really appreciate it, by the way. That's amazing. Fatima says, do you think that AI will be in many years maybe as good as a human talking about job tasks or interactions with clients, for example? I don't. And here's why. So, my perspective is that when you look at transactional stuff, when you look at where we're going in terms of work, so if you're just thinking about, hey, I need my ticket answered as quickly as humanly possible, that will eventually get replaced with AI. So it'll be a chatbot. You'll say, hey, I want this question answered, and AI will just respond. And that should be delegated to an AI, to be honest with you. Let's reserve that capacity for human beings, which is my personal perspective is there will always be a place for human beings to provide customer service to people. And I really think if you're thinking to yourself right now, where is artificial intelligence going and how can I fit inside of it? Customer service. That is the absolute critical part of building a job that has a very strong moat around it. Even here, as an example, we're doing these webinars. I'm on video. This is live. This is not me pretending to be an AI. You can see me on the camera. I'm not pretending to be off camera. This is why I think that it's so critical to make connections with people, because when you make connections with people, you do business together. And that is a critical aspect of where we're going to be moving forward. And I don't think that will ever be replaced with AI, with basically an AI salesperson, as an example, or customer support person or CS person. In terms of engineering, I think that probably a lot of the low level activity will be replaced by a human, but the innovation aspect really hasn't been figured out. None of these large language models are actually doing it at this point. They're really, really good at amassing all of human knowledge and then pulling from it and giving you an insight, which is incredibly powerful. However, it's not actually good at innovating and doing something completely different. So humans are still pretty good at that, and that is not going to change moving forward. Thank you very much for the question, Fatima. Next question, if it's here. Anonymous. I love the anonymous ones because those are probably the ones that are funnier. How much time does it take to detect irregular activity with the new feature? It takes half an hour. So we can detect it within about half an hour. Within 30 minutes, we'll be able to tell you whether or not there's some type of unusual activity or not. As I stated before, unusual activity does not denote that they are using one of these tools, one of these little mouse movers, but it is something that you need to be able to investigate to be able to identify whether or not they possibly could. So we leave that up to you, but we want to be able to make sure that everyone understands that this is not something definitive. We have set the algorithms quite conservatively, but still we do have, to a degree, a false positive rate. We don't know what that is exactly. We have done a little bit of an analysis with our first cohort of beta users, but we don't know what that is when it goes out into the wild. And since it currently is in the wild and it's been out for about a week, please, if you get access to that feature, please let us know. Talk to support, talk to me, because I'd love to be able to get more insight on it, but it takes 30 minutes. Next question. Greg with two G's. Greg. Uh, have you integrated any standalone LMMs, GPTs like Llama running locally into your apps, or do you think integrating cloud-based GPTs into apps will be a better approach? This is an interesting one because I actually think the direction will be one of two ways. Either there will be open source large language models that will just completely dominate the entire industry, or there will be the Amazon Web Services, the Googles, the Amazons that just have these massive infrastructure systems in place that where you'll just purchase your capacity from them. So you'll purchase the processing time from them. When you look at one of the biggest winners of the entire AI game in the last year has been NVIDIA, because NVIDIA actually has, and NVIDIA is one of the largest graphic processing companies in the world. So they build like GPUs, graphical processing units. And you need those in order to be able to run an AI. And they're actually very expensive. So when you hear about companies that are raising $100 million to be able to build an AI model, and it's like they don't haven't made a single dollar yet. Well, it's because probably 70 million of that 100 million needs to go into just buying those server racks, right? Those processors to be able to actually do all of this work. So it's very, very prohibitively expensive. I am assuming that that price is going to come down very fast. So within the next 5 years, we're probably going to need 1% of the processing power, or the processing power will become exponentially better inside of these systems. So the cost of entry will be significantly lower. My perspective is that we're probably going to need to integrate in the short form, because for us, we have hundreds of thousands of users that use our software every single day. And it's just a lot of data to be able to go through. We tried to do some initial integrations with ChatGPT and it just broke it instantly because we just have so much data. So we would probably need to be able to pay a lot of money to be able to have access to those systems and building our own racks versus actually renting capacity from someone else. We always want to go that route. Hopefully, Greg, GG, that is what you were getting to. Reju or Reju, let me know if that was the right pronunciation. How ticket behavior comes under time tracking. Is there an integration becomes under time tracking? How ticket behavioral comes under time tracking? I think the question that you're asking is there an integration with our ticketing software or with ticketing software applications? Right now, we have one with Zendesk, and we're looking to roll that out for multiple different ones. So if you currently are a customer of Zendesk, you can put in your API token and you can integrate into our software integration as it stands now. So let us know. You got to be part of the beta program to be able to do that. Again, the thing that I just showed you, sign up, put in your API token, and you're up and running, and you're able to use the beta program, or you're able to use the Zendesk integration. We are looking to roll that out to other ticketing software like Intercom, but if anyone watched the webinar that we did about 2 weeks ago, where we actually had the state of software adoption rates, because we have this large database, so we can actually see which companies end up producing or which companies end up owning the ecosystem. Zendesk is like 75% of the ticketing software industry right now. They completely dominate. And so we've been sticking with Zendesk, but we are looking to roll out to other applications. If Reju, you want to message us and tell us, hey, I really want you to integrate with this, please let us know, because we very well might do it if you're really excited about doing it. Juan, is 100% work effectiveness achievable? Is it expected? No, because I think the definition of effectiveness is actually a misnomer. So when you think about where work is going, it's how do you actually achieve the goal? And maybe the fastest. Would anyone have a perfect NPS of 100%? No, right? Like no one's going to have a perfect 10 out of 10 in terms of their net promoter score. That's impossible, right? And net promoter score actually has an unlimited up end and an unlimited low end, right? So you can go like negative 82 and you can go positive 86. The highest NPS ever recorded is Apple Computers, which had a net promoter score of 86. So it's just going to have an unlimited upend. So there is no like 100% achievable effectiveness in terms of productivity output. I would say there are going to be things where, let's say you are very, very good at your job. There's always something else that you could do, and there's always something else that an AI could teach you to be able to improve your overall output. And I actually think the long term vision of that Clippy of the future that we're looking to build here at Time Doctor is you might actually get to a point where you're saying, one, you are putting stuff into spreadsheets, and that's stupid. Let the AI do that. You do something more important. So delegating that those tasks to AIs is probably something that we're going to see in the next 3 to 5 years en masse. That's going to completely change the way that people work. Thanks for the question, one. Tim, Liam, we use teamwork.com, not Zendesk. Will you open up plugins to Time Doctor so that you can function so that we can functionally use the Time Doctor ecosystem? Tim, we're thinking about it. It would be great. Sign up for the beta group. So the link that we had up above in the chat, sign up for that beta group. And I think you already did actually. And we can have a chat about how you're using Teamwork. And we can actually do a data poll on how many people that we have throughout the Time Doctor network that use teamwork.com and figure out whether or not that's something that we could do an integration with. Also, too, Tim, if there's any other applications that you currently use that have a longitudinal quantifiable goal inside of it, we would love to talk because we want to integrate with as much of this stuff as we possibly can. Thanks a lot for signing up, Tim, and thanks for the feedback on teamwork.com. Next question. Mike, could you talk about how we can position and communicate the software features to our employees in a positive light? We want to ensure our team understand the benefits and reasons for the implementation rather than feeling surveilled. Mike, great point. This is something that we try to reinforce all the time inside of Time Doctor, which is let's focus on, and it actually entirely relates to everything that we're doing with artificial intelligence. Let's build a coaching tool. Let's build that Clippy of the future that can tell you, what are you doing right inside of your workday? Man, you're in the top 10th percentile of people that answer tickets, right, inside of the organization. Amazing, gold star. However, you're spending 5% of your workday on video calls with clients. And top performers that have the top NPS spend 20% of their workday on video calls. So by making that small little shift and taking more of that time to be able to jump on and have opportunistic calls with clients on a video call, as an example, you might be able to completely transform the way that your NPS measurement, your personal NPS. So it's a coaching tool. It's not necessarily a negative tool to be seen as something that's monitoring you, but it's also, and more importantly, a tool to be able to show when you're doing really well. Mike, if you have not signed up for any of like the beta program or anything like that, just email me, which is a secret email that I'll probably give everyone on this webinar, which is liam@timedoctor.com. And I will be able to specifically give you some white papers that we have in our CS team. And if you have anyone if you have a CS rep at this point, they will also be able to give you that information so that you can you can really train your team to be able to show, hey, this isn't necessarily something to show when people are being bad, but this is also a way to become better in your job. And that's something that we truly believe it's inside of Time Doctor. It's actually one of the core reasons why we want to be able to give everyone access to their data, because you can't actually get better at your job if you don't have access to your data. Great question, Mike. Really appreciate it. Next question. L is the unusual activity in the unusual activity report. Does that include the mouse jiggler hardware they plug into the computer? No, it doesn't. I don't. Yeah, I don't know if this is a serious question or not, but so it will detect the activity inside of your that particular user's version of Time Doctor. So here's how kind of like this machine learning, artificial intelligence works. Computers move consistently in a computer-like way, and they also move randomly in a computer-like way. So when you're typing random keys on a keyboard, even if you're a human being, you actually are typing in a way that isn't perfectly random. But an AI can't do anything but type perfectly randomly. So what this allows you to do is it allows us to be able to detect AI, computer-based randomness versus a user-based randomness. So if you're just typing on A constantly, we will be able to detect that. If you're a computer, we can detect that. If you're typing out emails to people, we'll be able, that obviously is human-based activity. But even if you are writing out the same, let's say you recorded your keyboard activity through some type of software and you were writing out the same email, or you went on a 1 hour loop in terms of your typing activity, we would be able to detect that as well, because it would show a consistent process of, well, it's this, they're typing in the same cadence. And also too, we measure cadence, right? So are people typing at exactly the same speed the entire time? Humans don't do that. Computers do. So we can detect that using artificial intelligence. Hopefully that answered your question now. Tim, will you be able to add our ChatGPT API key into Time Doctor for new features into the beta program, for instance? Yeah, well, so that's something, again, that's off into the future, Tim, but it is something that we are very much looking at. So if you're really excited about that, please email us and we can figure that out for you. Because if you want to become the tip of the spear and really look at some of this extra functionality, we can do it. What we were planning on doing was literally just buying the capacity um, from OpenAI to be able to process it. But as I said before, when we tried it on a small degree, we broke it. It just had way too much data. So we've got to actually have these LLMs evolve a little bit more to be able to take on the absolute ridiculous amount of data that Time Doctor collects. You can do it on a small basis, by the way. You can, if you already have a paid version of ChatGPT, you can upload the code interpreter. So you can basically export a CSV from Time Doctor. You can export it into ChatGPT today, and then you can just simply ask ChatGPT, what interesting stuff do you have off this data set? And it will tell you some really weird stuff, which is cool. So I would try that right off the bat, Tim, and then please email us. We would love to be able to get more time with you to be able to chat about that. Carlos, how do you conceive the relationship between time tracking and productivity improvements? Between time tracking and productivity improvements. Carlos, here is a scary thing that I'm going to tell you, which maybe even people disagree with inside of the company, but I'm going to say it anyways. I actually think in the next 5 years, time will be the least important part of Time Doctor, which is kind of a crazy concept to be able to think about, but I think it's true. The actual time that you spend doing things is not as important as the insights that we can pull out from Time Doctor and give to customers. So we believe that it's more important for you to be able to figure out why how are high performers built? How are they consistently high performing inside of your organization? And how can you take what they do and communicate it to everyone else inside of the organization? If we think that we can achieve that, then $10 per user per month is nothing in comparison to what you guys, to the real value that we would produce. We think that that's going to be an exponential jump forward in terms of Time Doctor and the value that we provide as an organization. So that's specifically what we're doing is we're thinking about what's the productivity improvement that we can provide. Time tracking is some of the data that we collect, but the actual output is what we're really focused on, which is why we're so focused on trying to correlate inputs, websites, applications, mouse movement, the keyboard movements to outputs, Zendesk data, your HubSpot data, your teamwork data, your CRM, your customer support tool, so that we can correlate those inputs to outputs to be able to backward engineer it. Thanks a lot for the question, Carlos. Oh, I got more. Okay. Viridiana. How can we get agents to prepare for AI to increase productivity? Are there any basic courses that can complement Time Doctor? As of right now, to be honest with you, I haven't seen any. And I did do a really interesting presentation for Genesis, which is a huge customer support call center agent tool at their Genesis Connect conference. And if anyone's interested, I can actually give you that presentation. But in essence, I think what you need to be able to identify with reps is how can you take the current data that you're looking at? It's really just kind of time hacking and work hacking, right? How can you look at what you're doing, compare yourself to everyone else in the industry, which you can do with Time Doctor because we have that type of capability if you want to be able to opt into the beta program, and then allow you to be able to pull insights out of it. Like, I use Teamwork. Everyone else in the industry uses Zendesk. Maybe I need to look at Zendesk. Why am I using Teamwork in comparison to everyone else? That's an interesting insight. I don't want to necessarily go after Tim here, but maybe that's an example of something that we need to be able to take a look at, which is why are we not using tools that the entire industry is using, and the majority of the industry are currently using? So those are perfect examples of things that I would think about in general. And Viridiana, it's a perfect example for us to be able to think about. Maybe we should build a training like that. If you want us to build a training like that, please let us know with a Y in the chat. I would be very interested to hear what people's responses are. Any other questions? Lauren, all right. Is there a tracker report for no movement screenshots for a certain period of time? Yes, there is. So if I actually, I can name off all of the different ways that we collect that data. And let me just pull it up right now. So we have unusually high keystrokes, long periods of mouse movements with no mouse clicks, long periods of mouse movements with no keyboard clicks, long periods of keyboard activity with no mouse activity, unusual high mouse clicks, unusually low mouse clicks. Keyboard strokes are unusually consistent, nearly identical to each other, which is something that I've talked about. Long periods of mouse clicks with no mouse movements. And there's a bunch of others as well that are, but those are the primary big ones that we see inside of the reporting. So we do absolutely everything under the sun there. And when you look at this report, you can actually grab that timestamp and then go back to the screenshots to be able to see whether or not there was consistency there from the screenshot perspective. Thanks, Lauren. L, is there a way to possibly know by means of AI the TPH or tickets per hour so we can effectively measure an agent's productivity during their shift? This is a BPO setup. Yes, you can. It's called the Zendesk integration tool. You can do it today. And it is relatively easy to be able to set up. So you need the Zendesk API token to be able to integrate inside of Time Doctor. We are looking at rolling this out throughout the entire process. Sorry, we're thinking about rolling this out as a general benchmark for everyone. So ticket completions are really dependent upon an actual goal, but long term, we can correlate Zendesk data. Like if we have 12,000 Zendesk users and we have 1,000 or 2,000 Teamwork users as an example, we can combine those data sets together, and we're probably going to have the same general level of consistency and fingerprint with regards to someone's workday. So that's the long-term vision of what we want to be able to do. But for us, we think that this is going to be a complete game changer because you'll be able to very clearly compare yourself to the industry at any point, right? If you want to be able to compare yourself to what is the average agent, how long does the average agent spend on video calls? We'll be able to give you that answer. How much do they spend on email? How much do they spend on their CRM? How much time do they spend on their customer support tool? We'll be able to give you that as a general standard, but then integrating goals like ticket handle time as an example will allow us to be able to refine it much more. All right. Yes. All right. So that was a lot of questions. I appreciate everybody being on. I know that we're significantly over the time that we had previously set, but really appreciate everyone jumping on here. This was great. If you have any questions, unusual activity report, go check that out. You want to become part of the beta program, go to get.timedoctor.com/beta dash program, and you'll be able to get set up there in the chat right there. My name is Liam Martin. I'm so excited that everyone was able to stay on for the 1 hour and 15 minutes that we've currently been on. And I appreciate every single one of you for having your attention during this time. Thanks a lot, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.